Hey, this is Matt from Budget Boosting, and today I'm going to show you the turbo modifications we're doing to the 1980 Buick. Now, as I started with one of my other videos where I showed you draw-through turbocharging, that's what this is, a draw-through turbocharger type of Buick. Now what we're doing is we're upgrading it because the original turbo over here is really small. It's got a very tiny compressor, a very tiny compressor wheel, and a very tiny turbine, which you can see. Very tiny turbine and a very big turbo housing, which means it takes a lot of exhaust flow and a lot of RPMs to spool. And it's got very, very small volume of air, so that's two bad things for a turbo. Back in 1980, they really didn't know much better back then, but you want the opposite. You want a larger compressor and a smaller turbine. Well, they fixed that problem in 1987 with my 87 Buick right there. The 87 Buick Grand National Series, the Turbo T, the GNX. This is a Turbo T, but it's all in the same family. The Grand National family, I call it. Anyhow, they put a Garrett turbocharger on this Buick from the factory, which I showed in my blow-through carburetor video. I'm holding this turbo going, after 30 years, it's still good. Well, there it is right there. I'm mocking it right now to fabricate it to fit this 1980 Buick, because this turbo has a fairly large compressor and a small turbo housing and a large turbine. So basically it's much larger than this as far as the turbine wheel size. The compressor housing smaller, so it puts more pressure and speed to turn this turbine wheel, and you got more volume of air going through and getting pushed into the engine. So I'm trying to work out the fabrication on how to basically get this turbo to draw through the carburetor, which I've already figured out the draw-through hookup. I'm going to upgrade the carburetor to this Holley-styled Summit carburetor. Here's the original hot, Rochester Quadrajet carburetor. This is what came from the factory. It's got way too many vacuum fittings on it, and this is a much more simple and easy to tune design, and it's a lot more in the performance department too. So I'm going to upgrade the carburetor. Of course, the turbo is getting an upgrade. This turbo is going to really spool fast and flow a lot of volume of boosted air. I just got to figure out the connection to go from the turbo's inlet compressor, to get it to the intake manifold. I got to make a joining coupling to go from the compressor to this fitting right here, which basically leads this compressed air mixed with fuel. It's going to be mixed with air and boost, and fuel going to go straight into the intake manifold. So I just got to work out that one little detail. So I'll probably be cutting some custom pipes, and Brandon will be welding them, and we'll be doing all kinds of custom fitting to try to get that to work. Because the stock unit, see, has this fitting right here. This is how, the carburetor brings the fuel and air to here, and it pressurizes the fuel and air and puts this right into the intake manifold and distributes it to the 6 cylinders. So I basically got to figure out how to connect the Buick, the 87 Buick's turbo compressor to this fitting here, and that's the only thing left to really do, and the rest will be downhill. Now another thing we got to work out is from the factory, this turbocharger had what's called an internal wastegate. This was on the back of this turbo like so. Now what this does, there's this little thing right here. This allows exhaust to bypass the turbo once it's reached a certain speed. So this stays closed until you reach a certain boost pressure, then this opens and releases exhaust. So once the turbine reaches a certain speed, this regulates the speed at just the right boost level. Now we're upgrading to an external wastegate. So this is going to go on the back of this. We just have to switch some things around. And this is an external wastegate. So instead of this little, internal wastegate, which is not the most responsive in the world, we're going to have a nice external wastegate where once the turbo reaches a certain speed, the exhaust is bypassed here and dumped straight out of this pipe. So you hear this nice, whoa, you know, this nice open sound when the wastegate opens, and the turbo will be regulated at whatever the spring pressure is. Like say this is a 10-pound spring, the boost will be regulated at 10 pounds. I'm probably going to put a 15-pound spring and then adjust it with the boost controller, where I can regulate the boost however high I want. So that's what we're doing right now with the old Buick here. And remember, whenever you're trying to go from a quarter jet to a Holley style carburetor, you have to use a spread bore adapter. Because here's the quarter jet bolt pattern, it's nowhere near this Holley style bolt pattern. So you have to use a spread bore. So you have the Rochester secondaries. These are the secondaries, these are the primaries, the Rochester. And you put this adapter plate on, and that allows the bolt pattern to meet the Holley style carburetor. So it allows you to adapt a Rochester to a Holley or Carter style carburetor, because you'll never find another one of these things unless you make it yourself. This little manifold for draw-through carbureting, you'd either have to make it yourself, but with this spacer I can run virtually any carb I want. Holley, Carter, Brock, all that good stuff. So there we go. More to follow, but that's what we're doing with this draw-through turbocharged Buick. I'm trying to bring out its best. So basically way upgrading the turbo to the 87's turbo, putting a nice Holley style Summit carburetor on here, which is really simple to tune and should give it a lot better throttle response and fuel delivery. I'm also going to update the fuel pump, because the factory has a engine driven mechanical fuel pump. I'm going to put a high volume fuel pump in there, a mechanical one, and then have a backup electrical. So I'll have just plenty of fuel pressure where there'll be no starvation. And I'm also going to put a boost timing master, which allows me to regulate the electronics on the distributor to retard on boost. So that's what's in store for this 1980 Buick Sport Coupe. And thanks again for watching Budget Boosting. If you like us on our Facebook, like us on our YouTube page, check out budgetboosting.com, and don't forget the window stickers. Make anything just look that much better. And remember, knowledge is power. It's horsepower.
Fabbed up a lot of these new sensor locations, because you know it's better to have a brand new thermometer than it is to have a really 40-year-old one. We got our fan relay for the dual fan shroud all ready to go. So yeah, big thing about this system is just to keep everything real nice and real cool.